My phone rang just as I was pulling into the driveway after a long shift. The sun had already dipped below the rooftops, painting the sky in soft purples and oranges, and all I could think about was seeing my daughter, maybe making her favorite mac and cheese before bedtime. When I glanced at the screen and saw the school's number, my heart skipped. I picked up, expecting maybe a message from the front office or an automated update. Instead, I heard her voice, small and cracked. "Daddy, can you come get me?" She was trying to be brave, I could tell, but her words trembled, and there was a wet sniff between every few of them. I sat there for a second, gripping the wheel harder than I needed to, trying to keep the worry from creeping into my voice. I asked what happened. There was a pause, the kind that makes a father's mind jump to every awful possibility at once. I was in the nurse's office. My tummy hurt, but they made me go back, and the principal got mad again. She said I was making it up. She said I just wanted attention. There was something else in her voice too. Not just sadness, not just pain, but confusion. Like she couldn't understand why the adult in charge of her school would be so cold. She was 6. She still believed that grown-ups were supposed to protect you. It shattered something in me to hear her already questioning that. "I promise I wasn't faking," she added, as if she thought I might doubt her too. I told her I was on my way, turned the car around, and tried not to imagine the look on her face when those words were said to her. I don't wear a badge when I pick my daughter up from school. I don't walk in with a pressed uniform or a polished demeanor that screams authority. Most days I'm in jeans and a plain shirt, maybe a ball cap if the sun's out. The teachers see me as another working dad, one of the quiet ones who signs permission, slips on time, and keeps to himself during parent nights. That's by design. I've learned that people behave differently when they know who you are. They watch their words, they measure their tone, they make sure their masks are on straight. But when they don't know, when they think you're just another face in the crowd, you see who they really are. It's a lesson I've leaned on time and time again in my line of work. My job keeps me grounded. It's not just a title or a paycheck. Being assistant commissioner means I've seen the system from every angle. I've sat across from people at their lowest. I've walked into places where power gets abused, where dignity is stripped from those who can't fight back. I know how authority works, and more importantly, I know how it can be twisted. At home, though, I'm just dad, the guy who packs lunches with way too many snacks and double-checks spelling on science projects. I keep my world simple for her sake. She doesn't need to know everything about what I do. She just needs to know I'll always show up. That night, as I drove to the school with her voice still echoing in my ear, I wasn't thinking like a commissioner. I was thinking like a father whose daughter had just been made to feel small. And that changed everything. My daughter's name is Lila, and she has the kind of smile that makes you forget whatever weight you're carrying. She came into the world quiet, eyes wide open, like she was already trying to figure everything out. She's always been gentle, the kind of kid who says please and thank you without being reminded, who holds the door for her classmates, who cries when someone else gets hurt. At home, she sings to herself when she colors, usually something she makes up on the spot. She asks big questions, the kind that stop you in your tracks because you never thought to wonder the same. She loves animals, rainbows, and stories where the good guys always win. For the longest time, school was her favorite place. She'd come home bursting with things to tell me what she learned, who she sat with, what the lunch lady said that made her laugh. But lately, those stories had started to change. She'd still talk, but quieter. Her eyes didn't sparkle the same way when she mentioned school. She stopped asking to bring her favorite toy on Fridays, even though it was allowed. And sometimes, when I asked about her day, she'd just say it was fine and change the subject. It wasn't dramatic, and maybe that's what made it worse. Like something inside her had started to fold in on itself, little by little. And I hadn't seen the full picture until she called me, crying, from that nurse's office. It started with little things. Notes in her backpack that didn't sound like the Lila I knew. Lila had trouble following directions today. Lila refused to participate in group activities. At first, I chalked it up to adjustment. New grade, new teacher, maybe a rough patch. Kids go through phases, but then it became a pattern. Every few days, another note, always vague, always clipped. When I asked Lila about them, she would look down and shrug. "I didn't mean to," she'd whisper, or "I was trying to be good." The first time I tried to speak with her teacher, she didn't have much to say. She mentioned Lila being sensitive, maybe a little too emotional. She said Lila seemed distracted, not always on task. When I asked for examples, specifics, the answers were fuzzy. It felt more like an impression than a real assessment. I left that meeting uneasy but unsure what to do next. Then came the lunch incident. Lila told me she had to eat alone. When I pressed, she said she was being punished for talking too much in the hallway. The punishment was to sit at a desk outside the cafeteria, facing the wall. She said it quietly, like she was embarrassed, like she thought she deserved it. I called the school, asked if this was part of a policy. They said it was behavioral redirection, and that it was used when students needed space to reflect. But Lila is 6. She doesn't need isolation. She needs guidance, patience, someone who sees her for who she is. I could feel something wasn't right. Still, I stayed calm, professional, gave them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe they were short-staffed or overwhelmed. Then a note came home saying Lila had been defiant. That word stopped me cold. Not silly, not disruptive, but defiant. A word used when a child is being framed as a problem. It's the kind of word that sticks, that starts to shape how others see your child. I looked at my daughter that night while she quietly colored at the table. I thought about how gentle she was. I knew something deeper was happening, and I wasn't about to let it slide. The first time I met Principal Dunning in person, she greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her office was spotless, decorated with a few motivational posters and a framed photo of her standing with the superintendent. She gestured to a chair across from her desk like she was doing me a favor. I introduced myself, extended my hand, and thanked her for taking the time. She didn't shake it. I understand you've had some concerns about Lila's adjustment, she said, already flipping through a folder. We've noticed a pattern of emotional outbursts and attention-seeking behaviors that we're working to correct. Her voice was measured, overly polished, like she'd practiced the phrases in the mirror. I asked her to clarify what she meant by outbursts. She described one occasion where Lila cried after being told she couldn't participate in a group activity. Another where she hesitated before answering a question in front of the class. Some children have difficulty with boundaries, she said, especially those who haven't had consistent expectations at home. I felt my jaw tighten. I asked if any of these concerns had been discussed with the school counselor. She brushed it off, said they were monitoring the situation internally. I asked if she'd observed Lila herself in class or on the playground. She admitted she hadn't. Everything she knew came from second-hand reports. Throughout the meeting, her tone never changed. Not once did she speak about Lila as a person. It was all data, behavior charts, checkboxes. I tried to bring the conversation back to my daughter's emotional well-being, but she deflected with policy. She quoted attendance percentages and disciplinary procedures. She smiled, but there was no kindness behind it. I left that meeting with the sinking feeling that this woman didn't see Lila at all. She saw a case to manage, a file to keep under control. The term Karen gets thrown around too loosely these days, but there was something about her that fit the mold exactly. She wielded authority without compassion, enforced rules without context, and wore that smile like a shield to deflect accountability. And beneath it all, there was a chill I couldn't ignore. It got worse after that meeting. Subtle at first, like someone testing how far they could go before anyone pushed back. Lila stopped getting gold stars for her reading assignments, even though she was still finishing them ahead of schedule. Her seat in class was moved to the very front, away from her friends. When I asked her why, she said the principal told her she was too chatty, though I'd only ever seen her grow quiet under pressure. Then came the morning she was 2 minutes late. We had hit traffic, nothing unusual, but enough to push us past the bell. I signed her in at the front office and watched as she headed down the hall with her backpack bouncing behind her. I waited until she turned the corner before leaving. That afternoon, she came out of school with red eyes and a crumpled note in her hand. The note said she had been marked tardy, denied entry into the classroom for the first period, and made to sit outside the door on the hallway bench. Lila told me she had to sit there silently for over an hour, listening to her classmates through the wall. When another student asked if she was in trouble, a staff member told them, "Some kids need to learn responsibility the hard way." A week later, I got a call from Child Protective Services. An anonymous tip had been filed claiming Lila showed signs of neglect at home, dirty clothes, poor hygiene, emotional instability. The CPS worker who visited was professional, and the report was dismissed as unfounded within minutes, but I knew exactly where it had come from. There was no doubt in my mind that it had originated from someone inside that school. I began documenting everything: emails, voicemails, notes in her backpack. Lila didn't understand why I was asking so many questions, why I kept making her repeat things. I told her it was to help make things better. She nodded, but she looked tired in a way no 6-year-old should. She had started to talk less at dinner. Her laughter came less often. The light that used to live in her eyes flickered. Then came the final straw. Lila said she had been told by the principal, in front of other students, that she was difficult, and that maybe this school isn't the right place for you. She told me that while staring at her plate, her voice soft and flat. That was the moment I decided I was done asking nicely. I was in the middle of reviewing a report when my phone buzzed again. This time it was the school nurse. Her voice was tight, professional, but not without concern. She said Lila had fallen during gym. She said it looked like an accident, that another student had bumped into her while they were lining up, but something about her tone made me press for more. When I got to the school, Lila was sitting on the cot in the nurse's office with an ice pack pressed to her cheek. Her eyes were puffy, and she didn't speak right away. The nurse glanced at me and then stepped out of the room. I knelt beside my daughter and asked her what happened. She hesitated, then said quietly, "He pushed me. I was just standing there. The teacher told me to move faster, and when I didn't, he pushed me." I asked if the teacher saw. Lila nodded. She said it was my fault because I wasn't listening. She looked at me like she was trying to figure out if that might be true. I stood up and went to the front office. Principal Dunning greeted me with the same clipped smile. She said the incident had been unfortunate, but not unexpected, given Lila's recent behavioral challenges. I asked if she had spoken to the gym teacher. She said they had debriefed and were aligned on their interpretation. I asked if anyone had reviewed the cameras. She said the school didn't rely on video unless there was a serious safety issue. When I pressed, she reminded me that the school had protocols and that parental interference could sometimes do more harm than good. I said nothing for a moment. I just looked at her, watching how quickly she moved to protect her own image while brushing off what had happened to a 6-year-old girl. My 6-year-old girl. That night, Lila barely ate dinner. She had a bruise forming along her cheekbone and a quiet that seemed to stretch through every corner of the house. She didn't ask for a story at bedtime. She just curled up and whispered, "I don't want to go back tomorrow." I sat in the dark long after she had fallen asleep. My title had stayed out of it until now, but that part of Methapart trained to respond, investigate, protect was already moving. The line had been crossed. I arrived at the school the next morning before the first bell. This time I didn't wear jeans or a cap. I wore my dress blues. My badge was clipped where it belonged, and the gold on my shoulders was polished to a shine. People tend to carry themselves differently when they walk with authority. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to announce who I was. I simply walked through the front doors, past the front desk, and straight toward the principal's office. The secretary looked up, startled. She opened her mouth, probably to ask if I had an appointment. I held up a hand. "This won't take long," I said. Principal Dunning looked up from her computer when I stepped into her office. Her smile faltered for a split second before she stood and smoothed her jacket. Her eyes flicked down to my badge, and I watched the color drain just slightly from her face. "Mr. Carter," she said, voice overly bright. "What a surprise. Is everything all right?" I closed the door behind me. "Not yet, but it will be." I didn't sit. I told her who I was, not just Lila's father, but Assistant Commissioner James Carter with the Department of Internal Affairs. I told her that I was opening an inquiry into several incidents involving my daughter, as well as broader concerns involving administrative conduct at this school. I said it plainly, calmly, the way I've spoken to officers under review 100 times before. She opened her mouth, probably to protest, to suggest I was overreacting. I didn't give her the space. "You will make yourself available for questioning," I said. "You will not speak to my daughter without my written consent, and from this point forward, everything you say and do regarding her is going into a file." She didn't smile after that. She didn't speak. I watched her face struggle between defense and panic. Then I left her office, slow and steady, knowing that the real work was just beginning. Within 24 hours, I filed the official paperwork. My role in the department gave me access to the right people, and I made sure to follow protocol by the letter. I wasn't about to let personal emotion jeopardize the integrity of the case. But make no mistake, I moved fast. The school board received notice. The district's legal counsel was looped in. I had already gathered most of the early evidence, written notes from the teacher, voicemails, copies of emails, and Lila's medical report from the nurse visit. I compiled a timeline that began the day of her first punishment and extended through the most recent incident. The dates matched too well. Patterns of misconduct rarely lie when laid out in black and white. Next, I arranged to interview staff members. Some were nervous, others guarded, but a few opened up. One aide, in particular, confirmed that Lila had often been singled out. She admitted she had seen the principal dismiss concerns from the teacher about emotional impact. Another teacher, speaking under the condition of anonymity, told me this wasn't the first time the principal had clashed with a family over behavioral labeling. There were whispers of similar cases in the past, quietly resolved with transfers or silence. I obtained permission from the district to review security footage. I sat down in a darkened room with the school's IT supervisor and watched the tape from the gym. The moment Lila was pushed, it was clear she had been standing still, arms at her sides. The teacher looked directly at her and then turned away. No help, no intervention. That alone would have justified disciplinary action. As the pieces came together, I prepared a report outlining repeated instances of neglect, intimidation, retaliation, and policy violations. It was thorough and backed with documentation that couldn't be ignored. I made sure every accusation was matched with evidence, every name redacted until proper hearings could be held. I wasn't just protecting my daughter anymore. I was holding up a mirror to a broken system inside that school, and I wasn't going to stop until the people responsible were held to account. This wasn't personal vengeance, it was accountability. The hearing was scheduled on a Monday morning, closed door but formal. Representatives from the school board, the district's legal office, and 2 impartial observers sat across from Principal Dunning. I was present, not as a parent this time, but in my official capacity. I kept my voice steady, my presentation exact. I laid out the timeline, the evidence, and the statements from staff. I played the gym footage. No one spoke when it ended. Principal Dunning tried to defend herself. She claimed miscommunication, misinterpretation, stress. She said Lila had exaggerated. She said the teachers misunderstood her leadership style. But the documents told a different story. So did the silence of the room each time her justifications unraveled under the weight of proof. By the end of the session, the board had seen enough. A decision was made by the end of the week. Principal Dunning was placed on administrative leave, pending termination procedures. Her credentials were flagged for further review by the State Education Board. Staff members who had failed to report or intervene were given notices of corrective action. The teacher who had quietly spoken up was commended and moved to a different grade where she could work under new leadership. The district issued a formal apology to my family. A letter was sent to our home with stamped signatures and careful wording. It didn't undo what had happened, but it acknowledged it. That mattered. When I told Lila she wouldn't be seeing that principal anymore, she didn't say anything at first. She just leaned into my side and nodded. That night, she asked if she could bring her favorite toy to school again. I said yes. I hadn't set out to bring anyone down. I had set out to protect my daughter. But when the truth is ugly and the damage is deep, justice can feel like a quiet kind of victory, one that doesn't need celebration, just relief. We transferred Lila to a new school before the next term started. It was smaller, closer to home, and the staff greeted us like we were already part of the community. On the first day, her new teacher knelt to Lila's level, introduced herself with a smile, and asked what she liked to draw. That simple question did more to build trust than anything I'd seen in months. It wasn't a quick change, but it was steady. Lila started humming again in the mornings. She packed her own backpack without me needing to remind her. She came home with stories, real ones, about the games they played in gym, or the boy who brought a frog in his lunchbox. She asked to bring her favorite stuffed rabbit for show and tell. I watched her carefully, waiting for signs of doubt, of that shrinking fear that had taken hold of her before. But instead, I saw her begin to unfold again. At home, the nightmares stopped. She didn't flinch when she saw her old school's logo on a flyer. She started drawing again, this time with bright colors and smiling faces. One evening, as we cleaned up after dinner, she looked at me and said, "My new teacher says I'm a really good helper." She said it with pride, not hesitation. That moment stayed with me. Healing doesn't come all at once, but it comes. And sometimes it starts with being believed. Sometimes it starts with someone finally standing up and saying, "You didn't deserve that." Some people think they can treat others however they like because they hold a title or sit behind a desk. They believe their rules are untouchable, their word final. They speak down to those they think have no power, no voice, no means to fight back. But what they forget is that not every quiet parent is helpless. Not every tired face is unaware. And sometimes, the person they choose to bully is the child of someone who knows exactly how the system works. I didn't throw my weight around. I didn't walk in shouting. I let her show me who she really was when she thought I couldn't do anything about it. And then I did something about it. Respect is not earned through fear or control. It's built through care and fairness. The next time someone chooses to mistreat a child, they should ask themselves who might be watching.